Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining. We're really excited for today's presentation. Um, as people are coming in here, we wanted to just kick things off and be respectful of everybody's time. Uh, what's interesting or exciting to think about as we live in these kind of strange times that we're in is to think about how past epidemics have really changed the way Americans have lived, and how these public health crises have always inspired, new innovations and new infrastructure and certainly civic debate. And so, as we were brainstorming ideas and information that we wanted to share with other restaurant operators or other operators in general, in the hopes of helping you guys during these times, we realized there was a lot of questions left unanswered. And so we put a lot of work into this presentation and decided to explore a couple questions, mainly being, should your dining rooms reopen? And if they do, what will need to change in order to kind of reinstill consumer confidence as we continue to face more and more uncertainty? So the purpose of this meeting is to share some ideas around new front of house sanitation standards. What I think is super interesting is that, back of house processes and procedures will likely not change. And we're going to get into today why that is. But, really this is a fight, and it's a fight to win, whatever customers are still out there. As a society, we're going to get through this. And the questions we should be asking ourselves is, how do we prepare now to make ourselves better off in the future? And so, in addition to the information that we're going to be covering today, we're also going to have a takeaway for all of you. We're going to provide you guys a free tool that you guys can use to conduct an assessment of your business to identify new areas of potential risk, relating to customer touch points and things of that nature, which we'll get in later today. My name is Jordan Kinski. I am joined by Tommy Anolis, and we are with Ops Analytica. This is a part of a webinar series we're going to be doing over the next few weeks here. For your own edification, this meeting is recorded. So if anybody wants to not be recorded, feel free to jump off now. We will be sending out this presentation later, of course. To keep in mind for next week, and something to maybe put on your calendars, we are planning on hosting a webinar that is going to discuss some ways and how to reduce operational expense and how to make your field teams more effective during these times. We want to hear from you during this meeting, so please feel free to use the chat feature on the right-hand side of the screen. We'll do our best to get through any questions that you guys have. Also, feel free to engage with us and throw some ideas our way as we go through this presentation. But right now we're looking at the agenda slide. So the agenda for today's meeting is to discuss some, takeaways and assumptions about what's happening now. We'll talk about some steps that you guys can take towards mitigating, risk. And then, of course, at the end, we'll talk about our free risk assessment tool that we're going to be providing to you guys. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Tommy, and we're going to get into the presentation. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jordan. Hey, guys. Thank you for coming. I know we have a mix of some current clients and also some just people that were interested in the topic. So welcome, everybody. For our current clients, we just chatted in that you're interested in getting some of these risk assessment checklists added to your portal, and we'll be happy to get those added for you. So moving on. Wow. Holy hell, right? What a day. This is a crazy, crazy time. COVID-19 is a different kind of virus for us. We're used to dealing with norovirus. We're used to dealing with viruses in the kitchen, and we're good at that. We're really, really good at that. And that's why we're able to make the statement. We don't believe that your current back of house procedures are going to really have to change. We are temping. We have the sanitizer. We're wiping down. We're worried about, we're handling cross-contamination. We don't let sick employees work. So we really do have the back of the house buttoned up pretty well. I could potentially see after the mask crisis is over, maybe we put masks on people, maybe we don't. But that's one of the places I could see maybe doing something, but I don't know that we're going to have to make major changes in the back of the house. Having said that, because of the way COVID-19 works, in that it's highly transmissible and that people have a long incubation period where they have no symptoms and they are contagious, we really have to rethink our front of the house procedures to make sure that we are mitigating risk for our clients and our employees and our brands. And your customers are a benefit, but they're also a potential risk, because every time they come in the door, if they're sick and they're shedding virus, we need to be aware of that, and we need to adapt to this new world. Okay. So here are some assumptions we're basing our presentation on today. People want to get back out there, and depending on your age group and your demographics, you're going to either rush back out there like the spring breakers and the millennials, or if you're a little bit older like me, or you're elderly like my mom, then in those cases, you're going to be dipping your toe back into the water. But people do want to get back out there, but they're going to come back as they feel more comfortable and as the virus in their area is retracting. So that's an assumption we're going to make. Another assumption is social distancing at some level is here to stay. And what I would suggest is that, similar to after 9/11, when we had those color-coded threat charts, social distancing is going to be a flexible thing that's going to be controlled by your county or your city or your state based on the current state of COVID-19 infections in your area. And it could range from what we have today to 4-foot distance to 2-foot distance to normal, and it can change on a dime. And so we're just going to have to be prepared for that. We're going to have to be flexible around that. Peer pressure and social proof are going to play a huge role moving forward in people's dining decisions. What's happening in South Korea, where they had testing and they had the masks and everything, was they didn't have to engage in this kind of social distancing. What happens is, if you get sick, you get tested, and then they confirm it, and then they do what they call contact tracing, where everybody and have been in contact with for the last 10 days or whatever time frame, they get contacted, they get asked to self-quarantine and to test and so on, and they can get quarantined for 2 weeks. And so that will be the norm moving past this initial period. That's what we're looking forward to doing. The problem is, now you have all this peer pressure. I can't be the guy that invited my friends or my family out to go to some restaurant or some venue, and then we all get sick from being in that venue. There's going to be a lot of peer pressure on me to pick a good venue, right? The second part of that is, and we're already seeing it today on my Facebook feed, just in my neighborhood and in my own social media. I'm seeing where people are paying attention to the sanitation and the COVID preparedness, I should say, of the places in our area, and they're mentioning it. This place is doing a great job. They did this really good. They did that really good. So that's social proof of people saying, hey, these guys are doing a great job, is going to mean a lot as people start to venture back out. Finally, which is crazy, the full service dine-in restaurant experience that we all grew up on, the restaurant experience that we had up until 3 weeks ago, I believe is not going to be the same in the future. I don't see how it's going to be the same. It's going to be radically different. And we should not, as we get back into the restaurants here in a month or so, we should not try to recreate that old experience, but we got to figure out what's the new experience that we're going to create, the safer experience, the new reality experience. So, we can't hold on to what we did in the past, because a lot of that stuff is just not able to be done in today's world. Good news. People want to get back out there, man. They want to come back. So we just got to give them the opportunity to get back in there and make them feel good. You can create new environments in your current building that's going to make people feel safe and welcoming. What I have noticed from the people just that I've been dealing with in the restaurants I've been dealing with is that the people who have really thought it out have done kind of what we're going to be preaching today, really streamlined the experience and made it feel safe. Those guys are getting a lot of business. They're busy. They're not seeing 50, 60, 70% drops in their business. So we can do this. There is a new normal that we can get to that's going to be great. Customers are going to reward, like I said earlier, they're going to reward the restaurants that are doing a great job of it. Jordan kind of mentioned this a little bit, I think, in his intro about being in a time of war. And I was talking to a friend of mine who was the head of ops services for about 3,500 full service restaurants here yesterday, as a matter of fact. And he had a really interesting analogy. He was like, in times of war, one of the ancillary benefits of those times is that there is a technological revolution spurred by the battle. Well, we are in a war with COVID-19, and because of that, the technology companies are going to adapt, and they are going to adapt to the new normal. And then you're going to see within 6 months to a year a whole slew of new technological solutions that are meant to help you be better at the new normal. And I think that's what's interesting is there are things that if you asked me 4 weeks ago, I would have told you I think delivery is really hurting right now because everyone is seeing that it's not really working for everyone. And so, we saw a headline the other day, about 3 months ago, that was like, it was really funny. It was an email and it came in and it was like, Red Lobster banks on delivery in 2020. And then right below that headline was another headline that said, Grubhub looking for sale, can't make delivery work, right? And so I would have told you 3 weeks ago, man, I don't know about delivery. I don't know if it's going to make it or not. And vice versa, I would have told you, I think kiosks are great. I'm hearing from people, they love the kiosk. People order more. Check averages are up on the kiosk. I would flip-flop that today because I think delivery is probably doing way better today. And I think unless kiosks can come up with a way to self-sanitize, they're on their way out. So we're going to see a lot of technical disruption. We're in a disruption period. We're going to see a lot of disruption going on, and we're just going to have to be flexible, be adaptive, move quickly, and we'll be fine. So let's get into it. The 3 steps to mitigating risk and increasing customer confidence. 1, we're going to conduct a risk assessment. That's what today is about. 2, we're going to be implementing new daily sanitation standards. 3, we are going to be engaging in sanitation theater. Okay, so we'll get into all those. This is something that popped up in my social media feed. I don't even know, I'm not even related to anybody in Virginia, so I'm amazed it got to me. But this is what we are trying to avoid. And I want to say I give credit to this health department that put this out, that they specifically called out it was a guest with COVID-19 and not a staff member. But in the new world, this is what we're trying to avoid. Everything we're doing today is to mitigate this from happening, because anybody that was in your restaurant during those periods, if they see this message, they have to self-quarantine. They've got to go get tested, and they may have to quarantine for 14 days. And that is going to be a massive, it's a massive inconvenience for those people for just going out to dinner, right? And so, this is what we're fighting against. Okay, so here are the 3 steps. Risk assessment. And we'll be doing an actual looking at our risk assessment tool later in the call. But basically what we're trying to do at a very high level with this risk assessment is to analyze an entire meal experience with a customer from the time they hit our front door to the time they leave our restaurant. And we are trying to reduce unnecessary human touch points, meaning the places that human beings touch in the restaurant. Because everywhere a human being touches could potentially be a point where you could transfer COVID germs from a dirty hand to some piece of something in the restaurant or onto another person that could then get those people sick if they touch their eyes, their nose, their mouth. We're trying to reduce unnecessary human interactions. We have to rethink what the dining experience is going to be in this new world. People don't want people close to them right now. I was literally in an outdoor kid party last night in a cul-de-sac with social distancing, and a neighbor of mine was trying to talk to me about something, and he kept getting too close. He kept getting within 3 feet of me, and I had to keep backing up. People don't want a waiter hovering over their table, reaching over their shoulders. They look at people that are outside their circle as somebody who's potentially could get them sick, and they don't want to deal with it for any number of reasons. So we're going to have to figure that out. So we're looking to reduce unnecessary things that you touch and unnecessary conversations that you need to have during that meal period. Where we can't reduce those because it's a thing that you can't get rid of, doorknobs and railings and, waiters bringing you food, then we have to have a mitigation strategy in effect. I would suggest the two that I can think of are masks, which it freaks me out with masks, but I understand why people like them. They keep the germs in. And I also suggest that you start looking for really cool, fancy, refillable sanitizer bottles that can be on every table that look decorative, depending on what kind of restaurant you have, because those are going to be your major mitigation strategies, is getting people to be able to sanitize their hands when they've touched something that may have germs on it. Just think of reducing contactless, right? Little Caesars is already advertising contactless pizza delivery. People are already advertising the ability to get contactless delivery. That's what they're going to want, even though they're eating in a restaurant with other people. They want the social experience. They want the drinks. They want the food prepared. They want to eat it hot right out of the oven, right off the stove, but they want to do it in a safe environment. Moving on to daily sanitation. We are going to be engaging in two major forms of sanitation: immediately after use and also touch points on a schedule. So that we'll get into those a little bit deeper here in a second, but that's what we're looking at. Anything that a customer touches that's going to go back into circulation needs to be sanitized immediately after they use it, or it has to be taken out of rotation. And then we're also going to be engaging on on different schedules of sanitation just around the building. A couple of things I want to point out here. Create a process. Get this stuff documented and hold your people to following your documentation on this, because there's just going to be so many points to hit and you don't want to miss any. And make sure your process is something you can update, because as data's coming in so fast and people are trying to analyze the most important parts, but people are going to start tracing this stuff back and they're going to learn things. And we need to be able to update those processes on a dime based on the newest available information, because that information is going to get out to the public and they're going to expect it when they come into your restaurant. The other thing I would suggest is this: just document it. I am a worrywart, and I am concerned about a lot of different things in the future, lawsuits and just being examined by the health department and all these things. So just, if you're going to implement these processes, make sure you're documenting them. And keep that documentation for a while till we get through this crazy phase we're in and we kind of get to the new normal. And then if nobody ever needs it, you can toss it then, but just have it in your back pocket, because you don't want to be without it, right? If you didn't document it, it didn't happen. Sanitation theater, in my mind, is as important as actually sanitizing. It is the ability to not only be making the business cleaner, but showing people that you're making it cleaner. Being able to communicate what you're doing and why you're doing it, right? Those are as important as actually doing the sanitation. So be thinking about that we have to be communicating this and showing people we're doing it, and making depending on what kind of restaurant you're in and what environment, but making a concerted effort and a big deal to get noticed that we're doing this, because it's what's going to instill that confidence in your procedures. Customers need to feel safe, and until they feel safe and until they can go out and eat a meal and come home and not, and be fine a week later, then when they can do that, they're going to come out again, and they're going to come out more frequently because they want to. But we got to make them feel that. And that's so important. Okay, let's dive in on reducing human interactions and touch points. So we're going to do our risk assessment in a few minutes, where we're going to go through what we built, but you can do this on your own too. And what I would suggest you do is you get you an assistant and you go outside your restaurant and you pretend you have COVID-19 on your hands, right? And everything you touch is going to get infected. You're going to transfer those COVID germs to that thing, that surface, and go through your entire dining experience. Open your front door, walk up to the host stand, touch the host stand, ask for a pager, get a pager, sit down, get up, go to your table. I mean, literally every single step. Touch your menu, touch the stuff on the table, pretend the waiter came over, hand your thing off, your menu's off, and just write down literally every step that's happening where you're touching, like every step that's happening in a typical meal that you do today, like how you would do it today. Someone comes over with a water pitcher, fills it back up, blah, 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 all those kinds of things. Mark them all down and then go, okay, where are the points where I am potentially going to transfer virus to something that's going to get reused by somebody else? Where are things that I could do if I was per se sick? For instance, walking through the dining room, if I start coughing, do you want to have tables that are set like in a fine dining restaurant? Probably not, because if I cough on those tables and I get on those utensils, I could transfer those germs. So everything we have to be thinking about is how do we mitigate the risk? How do we track the average touch points in a dining experience? And then we have to mark off, okay, this is where there's potential virus exchange. And can I get rid of that? Yes or no? And if I can, great, I get rid of it. If I can't, then I've got to have a mitigation strategy, which once again is probably going to be sanitizer. But that's basically what we're going to do here. And you've got to go soup to nuts on this thing, from the front door to exiting the front door, right? Bathrooms, everything a person's going to do, because you have to identify all those points so you can go, okay, now I know what could happen. How are we going to fix these? How are we going to get rid of them? Or how are we going to make sure they're getting clean? Whatever it is. Okay. Things that we know right now are going to have to change. Pretty much all QSR soda machine and all QSR soda machine areas, and where you get your napkins, your lids, your condiments, you put your hand in the bucket of the forks and the knives, all of that stuff, the customer or self-service station in QSR, you're not going to be able to do it in the same way. You cannot have people touching other people's stuff in the restaurant. It is a surefire way to get people sick. Reusable condiments, hot sauce bottles, ketchup bottles, salt and pepper shakers, all of that is going to either need, if you're going to keep it, then it needs to go to a quarantine area after it's done and be sanitized. But I would suggest we need to go to single serving, like in a full service restaurant, single serving ramekins, where you get ketchup in a ramekin, where you're getting salt and pepper in a ramekin. Maybe it's already pre-mixed and you can just sprinkle it on your food. And then all those things get thrown away and the ramekins get washed after the fact. Menus. I'm having a hard time figuring out how menus are going to work in the future. Because, the normal use case of a menu is it goes from the host to the table, the customer to the waiter to a box. The box then gets emptied and taken back to the host stand. Those menus are going to need to be sanitized before they get back into circulation. So we're going to have to figure that out. Like I said earlier, self-service utensils, cups, napkins, bar seating in the near future is not going to be a thing, or it's going to be greatly reduced. Kiosks, like I said earlier, you cannot have people touching kiosks. The same thing with those really fancy soda machines, the Coke machines and the Pepsi machines, where you select your soda, which was such a boon to our business for so long. But you can't have people touching those and then, you can't have people touching those and then walking away. Someone's got to wipe that off every time. You can't have soda refills for the same cups. So the idea of having endless refills is going to have to go away. You might have to go to one refill and you get a new cup with it. You cannot have people's spit touching those soda machines in any way, shape, or form, or an employee's hand. And I think we're going to really have to rethink the role of the waiter and the food runner in the restaurant. And what I mean by that is, you have a waiter. So I kind of look at it from a travel path perspective. If you're a waiter and you're in the front of the house, you are dealing with customers, you are coming into contact with their germs, you're bussing plates, you're taking orders, you're grabbing menus, whatever it might be. I consider you kind of like a dirty employee, not in the respect of germs. And then, in the today's world or in yesterday's world, I was a waiter. I would bust your plate, and then I might just, I might grab some sanitizer. I might not. I might go right to the bar, grab a drink, bring it back out to a table. I might get you new silverware. All of these kinds of things where I was touching dirty stuff and clean stuff simultaneously. And yes, I probably should have been sanitizing my hands in between, but most waiters don't, especially if a restaurant's busy. I don't think that type of waiter is going to exist anymore. I think what we're going to have are waiters who are in the front of the house that are bussing, taking orders, taking money, moving things from the front of the house to the back of the house. But I suggest that we're going to have way more food runners and probably no bussers in a normal like sit down restaurant. And those food runners are going to bring everything from the back of the house out, and they won't bus anything. So you can kind of have a separation in duties where you have a dirty employee who could potentially have germs, who hopefully is not going to be getting anything fresh out. And you will literally order a Coke and it will come from the bar and a food runner will bring it, or you'll order a fork or you'll order ketchup and you'll have more food runners that are just bringing stuff out that are clean. And that's a good division of labor, and it would be a good way to contain cross-contamination, right? What the whole purpose of this is stopping the cross-contamination and the spread of the COVID germs between customers and employees. Because remember, if someone has an outbreak in your restaurant, this is a situation where not only are the customers going to be quarantined, but the staff's going to be quarantined as well. Anybody who came into contact with that, they're going to, depending on if they've had a shot or if they haven't had COVID yet or whatever it is, a certain amount of that team could be quarantined as well. And so all of a sudden you could be at a point where you can't even operate because half your staff, and including your key managers, are all stuck, in a 14-day hold while they're getting better and isolating. So just something to think about. So just, this is really, really important stuff. Okay, moving on. Okay, let's talk about sanitizing. Immediate after use. Once again, we can kind of go through this whole list of things, but it's basically going to be anything that a customer touched that would go back into reuse if you can't do it immediately. So for instance, when somebody gets up from a table, we need to sanitize that table and now the chairs as well. Maybe not underneath the chairs, but definitely the seat and the backs where and the armrests where people are grabbing, right? And the entire table, and we're going to have to obviously give it the 30 seconds or a minute it needs to fully, the solutions to fully evaporate and have a chance to kill those germs. So we're going to be doing that. That's an immediate after use type of thing. Other things that might have been on the table, we don't have to clean immediately if we have enough of them, but we have to get them out of the dining room. So you're going to have a quarantine area in your dish pit away from food prep where you can take items like salt and pepper shakers, if you still have those, anything that's not going right into the dish pit, menus, sugar caddies, whatever you might still have or use, you need to take them to that quarantine area away from your food. And then you have to wash your hands when you're done doing that. But then at that point, they can stay there until somebody can go back and sanitize them. And then you can get them back into circulation. So that's kind of what you're thinking. And it's everything. It's pagers and table markers. It's going to be pens. What I would suggest we do with pens is we buy promotional pens by the 1,000 with your delivery number and your website on there and some funny saying like, hey, we like you so much, we want you to have the pen. I don't know what it is, but you do not want to just be taking these pens and handing them to people where they squeeze them with their fingers to write and then they give them back to you. Just let them have them, take them out the door, because you're going to have to sanitize them and deal with them. And honestly, what I believe is going to happen is that this kind of immediate use sanitation is going to be such a pain in the butt that we are going to remove those touch points as quickly as possible to just not have to deal with it, right? Because it's just going to be a pain. Sanitation schedule. There is no guidance from the CDC or anybody else right now that says what we should be doing this kind of deep cleaning on a schedule. I would suggest that this is part sanitation. This is also part theater and marketing. And so 30-minute, hour, 2-hour intervals, depending on what they are, seem reasonable to me to go around and hit all those touch points with sanitizer that you can just in case germs have gotten on them in the last half hour, we can get them killed, and we can just mitigate that transmission risk on a schedule. So think about it. It's everything. It's knobs, doors. It's all your knobs, door knobs, wait station knobs, bathroom doors, kitchen knobs, everything in the bathrooms, all your faucets, all your door handles, all that stuff just need to be wiped down really quickly with sanitizer to kill any germs on them. You don't necessarily have to do the whole bathroom, but you got to do all the places people are touching and knobs and all that stuff. Counters, anywhere customers touching, they lean up on the host stand, they lean up on the bar. All your screens, your POS, your tablets, your kiosks, your credit card machines. This is another example of technology that I was so psyched about. Toast started coming out with these really cool looking credit card machine tablets that they could bring to the table, and you could just put your card in there or tap it, and then you would hit 20% and you would sign your name with your finger. No, that has to be sanitized between every use now. You can keep those, but just know you better have sanitizer wipes at the table or at the wait station, and that has to be wiped off immediately. Soda machine stations we already talked about. Scoops and utensils, especially ice scoops, right? They never sit in any kind of sanitizer. So we're going to need to get several. You need to have at least 1 or 2 backups of all your scoops and ladles for your whole line, including your stuff you have in the front of the house. And I see them do this on the Disney cruise on the buffet, so I know it's doable. And they literally go through on like every hour schedule. They pull every scoop and ladle and ice scoop, everything out, and they replenish it with a clean one. You're going to need to get into that habit as well, just in case COVID germs are on those scoops. We don't get the cross-contamination. So you're going to need extras of those as well. You need to, once again, you're going to need to have this stuff documented in a process form, because it's just going to be so many little things you're going to be doing in this sanitation that you're going to need it documented so that somebody can follow along and not miss any of these crucial steps. Okay. And I'm sure there's a lot more stuff that you guys can think of that I've missed on this, but just be thinking where people touch, we got to get it clean on a schedule, and we got to make sure we're doing it. Okay. Okay. These are some training topics you're just going to want to cover with your teams or recover with your teams. How do you hold food, and how do you hold plates and glasses? I can't tell you how many times people come out and they're holding your glass at the top of the glass where your mouth's going to go. That could transmit COVID to the person, vice versa. If you're picking the glass up like that, I could be transferring COVID to your hand. Delivering food in plates. It's going to be really important that that our cooks are keeping the food in the center of the plate, so there's no chance that my thumb can touch the food on the plate. So just remember, really dressing those plates, keeping them neat, keeping the food contained in the middle is going to be important. How do you bus tables effectively? Where do you put the bus tub? Where do you put, where do you put the plates? How do you sanitize? How to sanitize properly? I think most importantly, that's why it's bolded here. You have to train your teams on how to explain what the new procedures are, so that when your customers ask you, whether it's on the phone, whether it's a host, whether it's a cook, whether it's a waiter or a busser or a bartender, they've got to be able to explain all the things that you were doing to keep them safe, because they are reaching out for validation that they made a good decision, and your team's got to be able to recite, oh man, we're doing this, and this, how to properly distance yourself now. People don't feel comfortable being crowded. And then obviously proper hand and glove protocols. One thing I'm going to tell you, there's a company called Amex, A-M-M-E-X. I have an email into them right now. They make an antimicrobial food glove. It's a nylon-based food glove. I've got, and they tout it as a food glove that can stop the germs like from cross-contamination in a normal kitchen. I've got an email into them to see how it works with COVID-19, if they even know. But they were talking about salmonella and chicken and stuff on their little web blurb. So I will, when we send this video out, I will try to let you know if that glove's available for you and it'll be something you could use for your teams. Because that could be a game changer. That could change some of the stuff I've already talked about today. If you know that you have a glove that will get rid of COVID-19 germs, that might change some of the stuff I've already talked about, right? New procedures, obviously, once again, going over that social distancing. But also what I mean by that is, for your hosts or your queuing areas, how do you queue people in the new world? How do you keep them socially distanced in the waiting area? What is your wait? What is your wait tool? Like, are you use where do you queue people up? How do you tell people, hey, I can't have you right here. You're violating people's social distance. I need you to move over there. And where is that, right? So you have to start figuring out some of that stuff as well. And you have to train your teams on how to have those conversations forcefully, but at the same time, politely. How do you deal with a person who's coughing and sneezing? You're going to have to figure that out. That person could be infected or they could have hay fever. Either way, they are freaking everybody else out in your restaurant. And you might offer to buy them their meal and put it in a to-go box and get them the hell out of there. Or you might offer to give them a mask, or you might offer to move them to an area where they are away from the other customers. But just that's going to be something in the future. And just, what are our new steps of service with the restaurant? How are we doing that kind of stuff? So we just got to think through all of those things.